who remembers every conference that you went to last year or the year before, and we talked we were going to Uberize everything. We were Uberizing HR, we were Uberizing dry cleaning. It was the business model of the future. And what happened to Uber? Their culture blew them up, right? And as leaders in the HR space, we continue to find ourselves on the forefront of the challenges our employees and the world is experiencing. So Me Too, we weren't thinking about that 5 years ago, and now it's something that we should all be thinking about. And then who's watched the Fire Festival documentaries? They're amazing if you haven't, certainly great for the plane, but I mean, it was just a travesty of lack of transparency and people being unable to say what was important to them. And here's another one, Theranos. I was going to try to do my Elizabeth voice, but I really can't quite do it. But, you know, this is, if you've read the book, they talk about the culture of the tile, which was what was going on in the labs, and the culture in the carpet and what was going on in the front offices, and how they really didn't have a conjoined view of what was going on at the company. And now the walkouts from Google to Wayfair to have been quite a few lately. And so it's the age of transparency. So what's going on in your organization and what your employees expect from you is becoming more and more, and it's become harder and harder for us as HR leaders to have impact. But do any of these sound like engagement problems to you? The Uber problem? I mean, actually, if you think about Theranos, that was like rampant engagement gone awry. So, culture is not completely engagement. And so in our age of transparency, your customers have a view of what's going on in your organization through things like Yelp and Twitter. Our employees expect us as HR leaders to take social stands, and they call us out when we don't do a good job. And that's where the walkouts happen. And then you think about what's going on in Glassdoor comparably. That's where your culture is on display to everyone, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so we want to talk about more about culture, but it's on the minds of everybody in your organization. Probably your board is talking about it. Definitely your CEO. How many of you hear from your CEO about culture frequently? Our research is showing it's more and more of a topic. I got to spend a weekend with the Bloomberg terminal looking at annual reports, figuring out how frequently investors were even asking about culture. And culture was mentioned in 80% of the annual reports I reviewed. So it's all the way down from the boardroom to the front line that culture is becoming really important. And so we are blessed at CultureIQ to have a team of IO psychologists, data scientists, and business strategists thinking about how do you have a complete view of culture. And so I'm proud to announce that you guys are the first group to see our brand new Culture Advantage model. We just launched it on Thursday. It is straight hot off the press, so pat yourself on the back and get a cape. But I'm going to turn it over to the brains behind the operation, Scott Young, or we call him Dr. Young because we're formal that way. So Scott, tell us about Culture Advantage.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sheridan. And let me first just say I'm only one of many brains behind the work, although I appreciate the plug, Sheridan. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our Culture IQ model, our Culture Advantage model. Let me jump ahead. All right, so our purpose at Culture IQ, the way we've defined it among our employees, is to help companies transform their culture into a source of competitive advantage. So we believe that a company can excel in their market in large part because of their organizational culture. And so we've got some ideas about how to do that and about how to help our clients do that. And so that's really our calling and our mission and our purpose. And really, when we talk about a culture being a competitive advantage, we mean two things. One is that the culture needs to be fundamentally connected to and supportive of your company's business strategy, right? So we don't define culture as there's a common or universal culture that everybody should strive for. Your culture, what's best for your organization, depends on what your strategy is. And so there needs to be that close connection. We also think that a culture becomes a competitive advantage because it helps create an environment where employees can be at their very best every day. that what they're concerned about are your customers and working for your customers and fostering an environment that enables that mindset. So what we did is we developed a model really with those goals in mind to help our clients create a way to really architect a culture that fits their strategy and to help them have a vehicle for communicating that to their employees. And so as you can see here, where that starts with is, first of all, having at the foundation of your culture a clear definition of who you are as an organization. And that means a couple of things. That you've got a clear, compelling, and shared purpose that you serve in the world. Right? So for a healthcare company, that means improving the quality of life for patients. For a financial services company, that might mean helping their clients secure a financial, secure retirement, right? For a technology company, maybe it's helping improve the quality of education around the world. So having that shared compelling purpose is really essential and at a foundation for the culture. Part of defining who you are, though, also means what is it that you stand for? What do you believe in? What do you believe about dignity in terms of how people should be treated, how they should treat each other? That could be the ethical standards that you stand for. It could be the way in which you view the valuing of individual differences, for example. But it really has to do with your fundamental beliefs about how people should treat one another. Next is how it is that we go about doing our work on a daily basis. How do we get our work done? What do we prioritize when making difficult decisions? Do we put quality above all else? Or do we sacrifice quality in the pursuit of short-term goals? Right? So what happens when competing priorities bump up against each other? And the way in which we prioritize those things says a lot about what our culture is. A second part of that is how we collaborate and to what extent do we work together as a team and as business units within the organization. Do we share information across boundaries? Do we reward team accomplishments? Or are we more individualistic? Do we reward what people accomplish as individuals and ignoring more about what happens at a group level? So those are important considerations for what our culture is and what it stands for. A third part of this is how we develop people and ideas. So how do we view talent as an organization? Is talent something that we invest in for the long term to help our company grow? Or do we view talent more as an asset that we acquire for a specific purpose? Right? So how we view a long-term investment is really critical in our talent, as well as how we value and to what extent we nurture curiosity in the organization. Right? So this means, do we really seize on opportunities to learn, to improve, and to innovate in our company? Or in other organizations, you'll see situations where new ideas and challenging the status quo is stamped out. Right? It's getting in the way of the task at hand, and so it gets pushed to the side. So how we treat and nurture curiosity is really important to how we develop and grow our organization. And then the last part, the pinnacle, if you will, of the pyramid, really speaks to what extent we disrupt in our industry. And so this gets at organizational agility. At the most basic level, this means, are we able to adapt effectively to change? When a competitor introduces a new product in the marketplace, if there's new government regulation, if there's a big price spike in our supply chain, right? These are all things that the external environment throws at us. And to the extent to which we can adapt to change says a lot about our culture and how we're set up to focus on that. Improving upon that is, are we able to anticipate change, right? Not just can we adapt when something happens, but can we see it coming? Do we have the discipline to be sensing in the external market and looking outward, having external focus in the organization so we can see those changes coming? And then finally, probably the most advanced aspect of agility is, are we proactively introducing change and being the disruptor, if you will? Are we forcing others to adapt to what we're doing in the marketplace? So those are kind of three, a maturity curve, if you will, around agility, which speaks to the final component of the framework. Now, we developed this with the idea that any organization's culture can really be communicated through this vehicle. Right? The specific ingredients of the culture that you want in your organization will go deeper than those four components, but they can be communicated through those four buckets. All right? And so the idea is that each organization has a unique culture based on their strategy, among other things, but this can be a vehicle for communicating that. Now, the way we've developed kind of the details around this are, I've alluded to these terms, within define the foundation of the culture, we get at the purpose of why we exist, and we get at our perceptions and our views on dignity and how we treat one another. How we do our work on a daily basis gets down to how we execute and how we collaborate. How we develop gets into developing people and ideas. And then finally, to what extent do we embrace change? Do we view change as part of our ongoing business, or is it viewed more as an obstacle, right? To what extent do we disrupt, and are we agile? So that is the framework that we've developed that we're excited about to help our clients articulate their culture. We want to help them really architect, assess, and activate their culture in their organizations. Now, I've talked a lot about what's on the outside of this framework, but you're probably thinking back to the beginning where I talked about the importance of culture aligning to your strategy, your business goals, your strategic objectives, which I haven't spoken much about yet. So we've done a lot around strategic objectives and the implications for culture. And so what we've done is we've researched 10 of the most common strategic objectives that organizations pursue. How is it that they differentiate from their customers in the marketplace? So for some organizations, that might be being the most customer-centric organization in their industry, tailoring their solutions for customer segments and then knowing who their most valued customers are. For others, it might be being the most innovative company in their industry. Yet another company might be leading on being the low-cost provider. Those three companies need very different cultures to drive those strategies. And if they're all following a common culture model, they're going to fall short on trying to build the right culture to optimize for their organization. So to give you an example of this, I'll use innovation as an example. So a company who's trying to excel at innovation, there's some very good research out there that shows what type of culture is necessary to support innovation. It's very different than if you're trying to be customer-centric or the low-cost leader, right? So to us, what this means is within our framework, it really influences what we emphasize. So if you want to be really innovative, within this framework, you should disproportionately be investing in collaboration, in curiosity, and agility. Because there's a lot of research that shows the importance of, in collaboration, you need to be sharing information across the organization to spark new ideas, to share best practices, and to find the next greatest thing in the industry. Obviously, curiosity, to pursue learning opportunities, to borrow from what parallel industries are doing, and to advance your innovative ideas in your organization. And finally, being a disruptor. That's what innovation is all about, right? Making change proactively to get ahead in your industry, sustaining your competitive advantage. So that's innovation as one example. I'll take another example of brand excellence, right? If you are Nike, they're kind of the poster child for brand excellence, at least my poster child. What that means is they're trying to differentiate and create value in the market through establishing a strong emotional connection between their customers and their brand. Right? They may or may not have the most innovative product. They may or may not have they don't have the lowest cost product, right? But their customers feel a strong connection emotionally to their brand, and that gives them added value and price power in the marketplace. So with brand excellence, I jumped ahead. That really means emphasizing first and foremost with brand is a strong and compelling purpose that the organization stands for. Right? What is it they want to stand for in the eyes of their customers and their employees alike, and creating alignment between those two. Secondly, really investing in talent, and again, being agility and being a disruptor in the marketplace to their brand. So I won't go through all 10 of the strategic objectives, but you get the idea that it all starts at the center of the framework with what is your strategy, and that determines the recipe, if you will, that you need for your culture to help execute on that strategy. All right, so obviously, in the end, we're pursuing important organizational outcomes, right? And there's plenty of research out there on culture to show these connections. We measure engagement for most of our clients, with most of our clients. We view that as largely an outcome of building the right culture. That if you go about building a culture that's compelling, you have a compelling purpose for your employees, and it's supportive of your strategy, engagement is going to follow from that, along with retention, customer satisfaction, and profitability, among other outcomes. All right, so to sum up our view and how we work with our clients around culture, first of all, we're not just talking about measurement, we're talking about managing culture. We view culture as a journey that takes time to understand, architect, what culture do you want to have? Assess, what is it that you have? Where are you falling short? And then activate that culture and make change to make it happen. So it's not just about measurement, it's about managing culture in an ongoing process. We're not focusing just on a project, but it's a program. It's that ongoing partnership that helps you nurture and develop that culture over time. And finally, it's not just about engagement, it's about culture. So we want really to encourage folks to think about when they're listening to their employees and gathering feedback, they're not just measuring engagement and figuring out how engaged employees are. They're thinking about how is our culture helping us be successful and how is it helping motivate our employees to get us there.
Thank you so much, Scott. So if you want to hear more about the Culture Advantage model, we have all of our architects of culture on site. So if you'd like to book a meeting, you certainly can come by our booth and we can talk about your culture and how you might use the model. We also are offering HR Hero Awards. So if you have somebody in your team you feel like goes above and beyond in helping create culture at your organization, we'd love to recognize them. So please stop by the booth. There's just a little card, and I promise it'll be fun. And then if you do not have a superhero cape and you are an HR hero, I have a ton of them. And if you, all right, I got you. It's like a Rangers game in here. Like, let's go. Where's my cannon?
And Sheridan, I just want to point out too that our booth just happens to be next to the bar over
right
here.
Next to the bar. And also, if you also want a caricature of yourself as an HR hero, we are doing those all day, tomorrow and tonight. So definitely start working out, because this is what I look like this morning, and then I hit the bar and not so much anymore. So thank you so much for taking time, and we really enjoyed spending it with you.
Everyone.
And come get these.